Did your other class, if you guys can unmute, we can talk a little bit easier, if you don't mind, guys. So just go ahead and hit the unmute button, guys. Thank you. And Jennifer and Carlita, are you guys able to be on video? Cool. Good to see faces. All right, we've got one person called User joining. All right, we're in pretty good shape. Skylar, if you wouldn't mind, and Alexander, and Jennifer and Carly, if you guys could unmute, that way I can just talk to you more naturally. Thank you, guys. And Carlita and Jennifer, if you guys could unmute, as long as there's not like crazy noise in the background. All right, we got one chat here. Okay. Yeah, don't worry about technical difficulties, especially today, guys. We'll iron all that stuff out. All right, we almost have everybody, I think. I'll have to check. How's everybody doing? How's your first class this morning?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. You guys are all together, right?
Yeah.
You guys are all together all day, so you get to know each other. Were you guys in the same class last summer too?
No. Some of us.
Some of you guys were, okay, just random, right? And it was a larger group last summer, right?
No. It was like 7.
Okay, all right. So you guys are the strong that have survived through the first summer, and now you're here in the second one. And you guys were all at Hill, right?
Yeah.
How did you like that campus?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. That's where I live and teach, so I'm interested for that reason, if for no other reason. I think we're in pretty good shape actually here. Right. Well, it's not as fun as being at Hill, I imagine, sitting in your rooms and doing Zoom, but we'll make the best out of it. You guys are probably used to this, I imagine, from the spring. You know, I'm a track coach, so I missed a whole season of sports and everything. It was pretty tough to miss that stuff. Do you guys do spring sports?
Yeah, I do.
What do you do, Skylar?
I do track.
You do track? Okay. Yeah, I'm a track coach. I coach jumps and sprints. What sort of events have you done?
I do sprints and a mile.
Ah, cool. Wow. That's a heck of a range.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Yeah, I've been coaching. I do long jump and triple jump and high jump, and I coach all my sprinters too. We've had a decent amount of success. Has your school ever gone to the Penn Relay, Skylar?
Not really.
No. Okay. Yeah. When you get into high school, that's usually the case. Sometimes junior highs will go, but it's a relay carnival they hold at Penn State, and it's the oldest relay carnival in the United States. So when I was an athlete in high school, I ran there in the 99th, the 100th, and the 101st running of the Penn Relays, and now they're up to 126, which is crazy. But this is the first time it's ever been canceled in 126 years. So the world has gotten goofy for sure recently. Welcome, Kennedy. Jennifer and Carlita, if you guys could just unmute, that way we can talk. I know your video might not be working well, but if you can unmute, we can talk a little bit easier. Jennifer, you there? Oh, there we go. All right. And Carlita, if you can unmute too.
Hello?
Yeah, cool. All right, there we go. Now we can hear everybody. And if you're able to get your video going, obviously you guys do that. You know, I understand about the background noise and all that sort of thing. No worries. All right, cool. We'll get started, guys. So my name is Dr. Lake. I'll be teaching you ancient history. So this course, what we'll do this year is we'll run all the way from 490 BC all the way up to 31 BC. So we'll cover about 500 years of history, and we'll do it at all kinds of different angles. So you guys do a decent amount of writing. You watch some videos, do some readings, do some creative things here and there too, work on a little geography. So we'll try to tackle that period of history from every possible angle. And I'll tell you a little tiny bit about myself, but then we'll go around the room so I can get to know you guys a little bit, and then we'll do an introduction to Canvas, because I know that's not a familiar format to all of you, and I'll give you an overview of the whole course just so you can see what we'll do. You know, and I have the whole course posted. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to look at the page yet, but literally every single day what we're going to do is already on there. So you guys can even work ahead if you want, and certainly, you know, if you're curious, look at all that stuff. But I've been teaching at Hill now for 17 years, which is kind of crazy to say out loud because that's older than you guys. That's longer than you guys have been alive, I guess. I teach classics there. I'm the chair of the department. So that means I teach Latin and Greek is what I do most of the time. I do the history and the culture and the language and all that stuff. Has anyone ever taken any Latin before? No? You know, sometimes, especially parochial schools, I'm not sure if any of you guys go to Catholic schools, but sometimes Latin is a pretty common subject there. I also coach track, as I mentioned, and I teach the humanities programs. The humanities program is English course basically, but it integrates music and art and history and philosophy. So we do everything there from ancient stuff to literally modern stuff. You know, I had a kid you know, do work on modern music, and we've had, you know, we do stuff on movies even sometimes. So all kinds of interesting stuff. All right, but let me know a little bit about you guys. So you'll see later on, if you haven't seen already, some of you actually even contributed to it already. There's a little meet your students thing on the Canvas page, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But let me get to know you guys. So if you guys can just say your name, let me know where you're from, or let everyone know where you're from. Let me know what your goals or plans are for this summer. You can say anything you want about this summer. You know, maybe you want to, you know, read X amount of books, or you want to, you know, learn to do something, or you want to spend more time with your family, or who knows what it is. Right. So anything you want to do for the summer, let me know if you know where you're going to school next year. And then the fourth thing is tell me what your favorite class is and why. All right, so I know that's a decent amount. So name, hometown, favorite subject, and also any kind of summer plans or goals. So Skylar, since you're on my top left here, we'll start with you.
My name is Skylar Sarek. I'm from Cliffside Park, New Jersey. I don't really know if I have any goals for the summer yet, because I don't know if we're opening up or not opening up yet, so I'm not sure. And
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm going to yet.
Oh, I think you cut out a little bit there. Sorry.
And I don't know what it's going to yet.
Yeah, the opening up thing is difficult. It's crazy. I've never been inside for this long in my life, and I've certainly never cooked and cleaned this much in my entire life. I've got 5 kids, so there's all kinds of interesting messes that can arise out of that kind of situation. But the county I'm in right now actually is green, so there's hope at the end of the tunnel. You know, things are opening up here, restaurants and everything. So hopefully things go well. All right, and the next person, let's hear from Onan.
My name is Onan Benedict. I live in Union, New Jersey. That's close to Trenton.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure of any plans for this summer also. And my favorite subject is math because I like solving problems.
Okay.
And next year I'm attending the Pennington School.
Oh, cool. Yeah. We see Pennington a decent amount. So how close is Pennington to Union?
Like 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. That's easy. And will you board there?
No.
You'll drive. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah. Pennington. Does Pennington have any boarding?
Oh yeah, it does have boarding, but
okay.
I live close. So.
Yeah. So you probably board your last year or whatever. Cool. Very good. And what sort of math do you like the most? Are you more of an algebra guy, a geometry guy, a trig guy?
Algebra.
Algebra. Yeah. Cool. So we'll be studying a lot about the Greeks and the Romans, guys. So and you might know that they have a pretty large role, the Greeks especially, in the world of mathematics. So the Ionian Greeks is actually the first Greeks we'll talk about. They live on the modern day coast of Turkey, if you know your Mediterranean geography, and they took the geometry that the Egyptians developed to help to predict Nile flooding. They abstracted it and began using it to solve sort of more different problems altogether, I guess, like more about the property of number and shape and things like that, rather than just practical stuff. So it's kind of interesting. Has anyone ever studied any trigonometry before? So you might know that. So trig is what you do with triangles, right? So it's all about, if you know two of these things, if you know two of the sides, or if you know two of the angles of a triangle, you can tell every other piece of information. So there's a famous Greek mathematician who studied obelisks in Egypt, right? Those are the giant pillars, like the Washington Monument is a modern adaptation of an Egyptian obelisk. So he would study obelisks in Egypt, and he was able, by measuring the angle of the sun and the shadow that it casts on the ground from the obelisk in, I think it was like 493 BC, somewhere around there, he was able to accurately record or measure the circumference of the planet Earth just from the shadow cast by an obelisk. Pretty unbelievable, right? And not something you probably think of as an obvious application of mathematics. But anyway, mathematics is pretty cool stuff. All right, so I'll go to, is it Michaela?
Yeah. My name is Michaela. I live in Newark, New Jersey, and I currently don't have any plans for the summer, but I do really like history because I like it's and kind of I mostly focus on the history of art. So
Okay. Cool. Are you an artist yourself?
I do like art, but my main focus isn't really art.
Yeah, sure. That's cool. Well, you're in the right place if you like history. And art history is one of my favorites too. So we will do a decent amount of that. And I teach a ton of that myself. Is there a period of art history that you particularly like the Renaissance or medieval or modern?
Probably the Renaissance.
Renaissance? Yeah, that's fantastic stuff. We'll I'll have to make sure I get some stuff in the curriculum for that. So usually during the course of the year, I'll teach like the rooms of Raphael in the Vatican. I've taught the Sistine Chapel. I've taken students there before. That stuff is mind-blowingly great. I do this one thing too with my humanities class where I do a sequence where I do the history of sculpture. So I go all the way from archaic. I go all the way from Egyptian Kouroi all the way up to Michelangelo's statue of David. So we kind of look at a whole history of sculpture, and we do that through the story of David from the Bible. You guys probably know that from Kings too. But that's a lot of fun. That stuff's a lot of fun. Cool. Thank you, Michaela. And Kennedy, tell me about you.
I'm Kennedy. I live in Patterson. Wait, you said what school we're going to, right?
Yeah, if you know it. Yeah, I know not everyone has a set place to land next year.
I'm going to Girard College.
Cool.
I don't really have any plans for the summer, and my favorite subject is math.
Awesome. And I might be wrong about this, but I think Girard College, a lot of the money that was set aside to found that school in the first place, so you have to look this up, I'm pretty sure, was set aside by a woman who is a widow whose son and husband died on the Titanic. And the family is Widener. So they're the same family that gave all the money to found the Widener Library, which is Harvard's library, and a bunch of other schools too. So they're amazingly philanthropic people. So, the type of person who took a tragedy in her own life, but then turned it into something really positive. Obviously gave all kinds of money, and now the amount of opportunity and education going on. that came out of that is somehow makes up for it, I think. Cool, Kenny, thank you. And we'll go over to, we got someone joining. I'll go over to Jennifer here.
Yo, my name is Jennifer. I live in Newark, and I'm going to the Pingree School next year.
Ah, cool.
My favorite subject is math.
Okay, and what sort of math do you like?
Algebra too.
Algebra, okay, all right. So you like finding the unknowns. Cool. So is this the STEM group? Do you guys know what cohort you are? Because I know there's like a long.
We're the business.
Business.
Business. Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys gonna be making all the money someday? All right, Kevin. How about you?
I'm Kevin. I live in Newark, New Jersey. My favorite subjects are science and history. For science, mostly chemistry and physics.
Oh, wow.
For history, I like to learn about like ancient Greek, Rome, and like all that stuff in Europe. And I'm going to St. Benedict's Prep next year.
St. Benedict's. Do they still have an incredible basketball team there?
I think so.
Probably. Yeah, and I know their soccer team is ridiculously good too. They were ranked #1 in the U.S. for prep schools. That's cool. Good for you. Is St. Benedict's in Newark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I live like 5 minutes away, so it's.
Oh, nice. Can you walk then, or is it a drive?
I can walk. That'd be like 10 minutes.
Fantastic. Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you, Kevin. And we've got Carlita.
Yes. Hi, I'm Carlita Cadena, and I'm from North Plainfields. My favorite subject is math, and I mostly like algebra. And my plans for this summer, I guess, is getting better at soccer because now I have soccer practice daily. So yeah.
Okay, so your soccer practice has started up again?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
But we have to wear masks while practicing, which is kind of a drag.
Gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah.
My son's baseball has finally started. So they started like a week and a half ago, and the boys don't have to wear masks, but I'm one of the coaches and I have to wear a mask, and it gets kind of hot.
Yeah, it gets hot.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it's like running around with that. It's ridiculous. So are you hoping to play? And Carly, do you know where you're going to school next year?
Oh yeah, I'm going to Gill St. Bernard's.
Okay, cool. And you're hoping to play soccer for them, or do you know if you're playing for them already?
Yeah, I spoke with the coach, and he gave me details about playing.
Oh, cool. What's your position?
I'm a 6, which is kind of like defensive midfield.
Oh, okay. That's an important position. So you're all over the field, but so like the old-fashioned name for that might be stopper.
Yeah, stop.
Yep. Cool. Good stuff. Thank you. And Vida.
Hi, I'm Vida. I don't have plans for the summer. I'm going to Mercer County Technical School, so it's like a STEM school.
Yeah.
And what was the next one?
Favorite subject?
It's in between with like reading and history.
Okay.
Mainly because those are the 2 classes like you debate in, and I'm into debate and Model UN. So.
Cool. Yeah, we'll do lots of debate in this class. And I'm not sure if you guys looked ahead at the Canvas at all, but I've got 3 or 4 debates, and they'll be initially virtual, but then we can settle them in person. So if you like the conflict of words, you've come to the right place. I enjoy that stuff quite a bit too. Do you have a literary genre that you like most? Do you like short stories, novels, poetry?
I like sometimes poetry, depending on like the main topic of it, or like the standard point, or I'll read like articles, but not like the boring ones. If that makes sense.
You gotta
like the ones I don't like the reality ones, like political.
Okay. Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you, Vida. And Alexander.
Hi, my name's Alex. I'm from North Bergen. My favorite subject is math, and in September I'll be going to Westtown.
Westtown, okay. That's a beautiful campus down there, and you'll board down there then, right?
Mhm.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I actually know the classics guy down there, Ted Freeman. So if you take Latin, and you mentioned Dr. Lake, you'll know who I am. But yeah, that's a really cool school. Awesome facilities and just really nice vibe. That's one of the schools I know pretty well. Good for you, Alex. Sorry, did you say your favorite subject?
Math.
Math. Okay. Got a lot of math fans in here, so we have to work some of that into the curriculum. All right, guys. So we're about only 20 minutes in here, so I'm going to do some overview of the course. I'll share my screen with you so you can look at Canvas. So have any of you used Canvas before?
No.
No,
No?
it's my first time.
Yeah, no worries. I think you guys will probably figure out pretty quickly, especially I imagine you guys are a lot better with computers than I am. Did you guys use Google Classroom maybe before?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's pretty similar to that. But let me share my screen with you. That's one of the nice things that you can do on Canvas. Here we go. I'll show you the whole page and everything else. All right. Where is it? Up over here. All right, can everyone, it's being slow all of a sudden now. All right, can everyone see this page where it says welcome and overview, meet your teacher, etc.?
Yeah.
You guys are good? Okay. All right, so so this is basically where you'll land, guys, for everything. So it's called Seeds History. If you're here, I imagine you accepted the invitation to the course. The easiest way to navigate around here, guys, kind of your home base will always be this modules page. All right. And basically the page is divided up into 3 modules. All right. So this first one just gives you all the course information. I'll go over some of that in a moment. And then the second one actually has all your, begins the course work basically, and it's divided into theme. So the first thing we'll study is the Persian Wars. And then you'll have an overview for each module. Then you'll have each individual class and the homework assignments that go with it, right? So since we're meeting Monday, obviously this is our class right here, and then your homework is right here. I'll show you your homework actually, why not? So here's your first homework assignment, guys. So just to get acquainted with the whole period that we're studying in the Greek world at least, and Kevin might already be an expert on some of this stuff, but your first assignment is just to watch this video. It's an 18-minute video. It's pretty well done. It's a little bit goofy, like all YouTube videos, but it's accurate and good information. And then the part you'll turn into me is you'll watch the video, and as you watch, you'll take notes. And I just gave you an example of a good outline format. I actually like using Roman numeral 1A and et cetera like that. But you can do any format you want for your notes. But this just gives you an example of what my notes look like for the first minute of the video. And then at the bottom of the page, once you've written your notes, read them over, make sure they make sense, make sure you understand it, and then you submit them to me, and that'd be your first assignment. Right? And I'll grade it and make some comments and all that good stuff. And then when we meet on Wednesday, we'll go over that a bit. We'll talk about your favorite parts or things you want to know more about, and we can actually even alter some of the course content, in case all of you guys are interested in this topic or that topic. And then we'll also begin our work on the first period. We'll talk about Herodotus and the Persian Wars and all that sort of thing. All right. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, though, because I just want to show you how to use this page first. All right, so go back to modules. You will see in this course information piece, guys, that when it has these things on here, like view, contribute, they are kind of sequential. So you do need to look at all this stuff before you can open the stuff below, right? So it's kind of just designed to guide you through in a sequential way. The one thing that doesn't force you to look at it is this discussion forum, but you can use it anytime you like, because chances are if you have a question about something we're doing in class, you're probably not the only one. And that's one of the most important pieces of advice I can give you as a student throughout your whole entire life, is always ask questions, because that way you can always have things clear for you. And it also shows the teacher that you want to have things clear. You know, it's never an admission of, stupidity or something like that. You know, questions are evidence of an intelligent mind. But then you can reply to each other's questions here too. I'll reply obviously too. But you might have a question or you might want to work with someone on something. And this is a good place to go for that. It's just all in one spot. All right, I can go back to the modules here. And then so you can see our first module is Persian Wars. I'll talk about that in a moment. And we've got 4 classes dedicated to that. Pretty much after every class, we'll have a homework assignment. So since we do meet alternate days, you know, theoretically you do have 2 nights to complete those assignments. And you can manage your time however you like. If you like to get it all done in one shot, do that. If you want to get it done in pieces, you can do that. Once in a while, there is more than one assignment after a class, but that's usually when we have 4 days between classes. You know, if we have a Friday class and we don't meet again till Tuesday, you might get 2 things, but it generally will be about an hour of work between classes. I realize it's the summer and I don't want to absolutely crush you guys, but I do want to cover information and learn some interesting things. Second one is Rise and Fall of Athens. So those are the next courses there. You can see everything we're going to be doing. And then the final module is Ancient Rome. So we'll do the final 5 classes, I think it is, on Ancient Rome. And we'll end with Augustus, right? We'll talk about this guy, Caesar. The month we're about to enter is named after him. So we're about to go into
August, July.
July.
Yeah. So that's actually named after him, if you can believe that, right? Because Caesar modified the calendar. So the Roman calendar before Caesar was something of a lunar calendar, and so it was always off step, because a lunar calendar, if you do the 12 phases of the moon, a month is really a month, but it's a little bit longer than a moon phase, right? A lunar phase is only 28 days. And a lot of ancient civilizations measured time by moons. But if you do that, you eventually are off by, whatever it is, 12 days a year. And that can be deadly because you might not put the crops in at the right time. And so more sophisticated societies end up moving to a solar calendar. And Caesar helped to finish that process in the Roman world. And so now July is named after him, and August is named after his adopted son and first Roman emperor, Augustus. So you're an important person in history when time is based on you. Who would you say, if I'm going to put forward that thesis, you're important in history if time is named after you, who therefore has the most privileged position, the most important position in terms of how we reckon time? What do you guys think? He is a very important religious figure.
Isn't it Jesus because of BC and?
Absolutely, no doubt about that. Yeah, I mean, literally the year is based on, it's not accurate. We've discovered it's off by 2 years or something like that, but we don't know exactly how much off it is. But yes, every single year that human beings, East and West, reckon time based on is Jesus. So 2020, because there's 2020 years after Jesus's life. So kind of crazy to think about. The Greeks reckon time based on the first Olympic Games, which is really interesting, right? So every year they had was based on which Olympiad it was. So you might call this year, for example, or let me go back to a year I would know, like the year 2012. The way a Greek would talk about that year, it would be the year of the 14th Olympiad, or the first year of the 14th Olympiad, when Usain Bolt won the 200-meter race. And that's also how they reckon time. It's whoever won the Stade, which is about 200 meters. So they would also name the year they named 4 years based on the victor of a foot race. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. That's what they did. whereas the Romans reckoned time based on the traditional foundation date of Rome, and then each year was named after the consuls. So the consuls were the head of the Roman government. And then you can go to any culture at any time throughout the history of humanity, and they'd all have a different way of reckoning time, which is kind of fascinating. They have a year zero date like the Mayans had and the Incas had fascinating ways of reckoning time. But anyway, getting a little ahead of ourselves here. But all right, so that's what we'll do, guys, in terms of the organization. So obviously, you know, the best advice I ever got when I began college, for example, was come to class and read the books. And if you do that, you're going to be very successful. If you take the next step and do your best work and you become deeply engaged, then not only will you do well, but you'll get a lot out of it. I think by answering some of these questions and investigating things we're going to investigate these next 5 weeks this summer, you'll get a lot out of this stuff. So just for an example, right? So here's our landing page for the first module, right? So you want to read this over just to get acquainted with things. So we'll study the Persian Wars first, right? And this kind of goes through why we're studying it, what that is in the first place, and I'll show you some stuff in a second, actually. But then you got some questions, some outcomes that we've got. So we're going to be able to talk in an intelligent way about what is the value and purpose of history. We'll become familiar with the geography of the ancient world. We'll talk about that in regards to the modern world too, obviously. And then we'll know a lot about the events and personalities that helped to shape the ancient world, right? And we'll see all those reverberations about how they affect the present. You know, for example, we live in a democratic society, and the idea of democracy was born in Greece, born in the city of Athens specifically. And the fact that we have our rights and our freedoms, you know, the power of those things, even though they're often imperfectly realized, but the power behind those ideas arises in this area of the world, you know, 2,500 years ago, and it's an extraordinary thing to consider. But then we kind of have some deeper questions we can think about too, right? How reliable or trustworthy are our sources for history, right? Who's writing the history? What are their biases? Where are their blind spots? What are their sources? Are they just talking to people? Are they looking at documents? All that sort of thing. How and to what extent do the events of 2,000 years ago still affect the modern world? Right, fascinating question there, right? If the Persians didn't make their stand at Thermopylae, if the Spartans didn't make their stand at Thermopylae, we would not be reading English right now, that's for sure. Not even close, right? And that's one battle that maybe you've never thought about, but it's completely altered the entire history of the Western world. One battle, you know. Has the divide between East and West grown larger or smaller over the last 2 millennia? What are the origins of that conflict? So we'll talk a ton about that because we'll really see in the first historical way. Now, there are mythic things that precede this, but we'll see the first historical way that East and West came into conflict. And we'll talk about why that was. And obviously, that conflict still exists with things like Al-Qaeda, et cetera. Do people and civilizations still fight for and desire the same basic things that they did in the ancient world? That's another important question to consider too, right? When you think about the Greeks and Romans or any ancient culture, they're deeply familiar to us. They have a lot of the same actions, behaviors, personalities, but they might have values, let's say, or ways of life, and certainly technologies that are, it's like they're aliens to us. So we can kind of explore all those interesting dynamics there. All right. Let me stop sharing here. Oh, actually, no, you know, I'm going to jump over here. All right. So I said we're going to do 490 BC to 31 BC, guys. So for you guys, what kind of events or personalities do you think we're going to cover? Or what are some things you're interested in that period if you know anything about it? Who are some people or events or wars or civilizations that we might talk about?
I just hope we learn more about ancient Greece and ancient Rome, because like I learned like a lot about. I want to see if there's anything more to learn.
I'm sorry. Sorry, there's this crazy loud truck. You learned a lot about what?
I said I learned a lot about ancient Greece and ancient Rome.
Oh,
And
cool.
I want to know if there's still anything left to learn about them.
Yeah, there's an amazing amount. I'm glad you're interested in that phase of history. It's fascinating stuff. There's no doubt about it. Any names, guys, we know from those periods besides Caesar that we already mentioned?
For the Persian Empire, I remember Constantine.
Yeah. So that's the eastern part of the empire. So he's actually a Roman emperor, but yes, he inhabits the city that's originally controlled by the Persian Empire. Absolutely, yeah. Constantine is a fascinating guy. We just talked about the fact that year zero is associated with the birth of Jesus. So Constantine, with the Edict of Milan, made Christianity legal for the first time in the Roman Empire, and from there, really, it took off. Because you can imagine the incredible territorial sway that the empire had. And then you have things like Julius Caesar. Here's a crazy one. Julius Caesar, one of his roles in government was Pontifex Maximus, which is the exact same name, the official name of the Pope today. That's an amazing thing to think about. So Julius Caesar had the same job as the Pope. He was head of the Roman religion, which is nuts. And I wonder sometimes if in 10,000 years from now, when our phase of history is being studied, if we might not just be looked at as an extension of the Roman Empire, right? So, like, for example, if you landed in Washington, have you guys ever been to Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
Some of you probably have, right? I mean, you've certainly seen the monuments, right? If you go to the Lincoln Memorial, or you go see the Washington Monument or the Capitol building, right? Those are all examples of Greek, Egyptian, and Roman architecture. And if you were to walk around the ruins of that, because they'll be ruined someday, just like Greece and Rome are ruins, they'll be ruined someday too. And you were to draw some conclusions, you would have a hard time not seeing the continuity between those civilizations and ours, right? Even linguistically, English is just a combination really of German and Latin. And Latin is the language of the Romans, of course. And then, the things that survive are things that are stone and metal. And you might pick out a penny and you'd see the picture of Lincoln on that penny. And you guys know what it says under that penny? Has a famous phrase underneath the face of Lincoln on a penny.
It's not "In God We Trust," right?
That's what it is. Yeah. So Kevin, if you were an archaeologist, what would you assume about Abraham Lincoln? So we've got a picture of a dude, and it says, "In God We Trust" underneath him. What would you assume about who that guy was? Probably God, right?
Yeah.
Right? A weird thing. If you don't have any context, what else would you assume? And then on the back of it is a Greek temple. So you'd have to conclude that, all right, they had a cult to the God president, and they worshipped him, right? Have there been civilizations throughout history where you worship the ruler as a god? Absolutely. Would it appear to a archaeologist 5,000 years from now that we did the same thing in the United States? I don't know how it couldn't. So it's some funny things to think about there. Anyway, but we're starting at 490, guys, because we're looking at the first interesting conflict between East and West. Where'd that map go? Oh, look at this one.
Sorry, that's my bad. It just randomly kicked me out.
Oh yeah, no worries. That's gonna happen, guys. I just got my Wi-Fi kind of jacked up this week so I could do this easier. Internet technology does not work the best. So this is the Persian Empire, guys. Kind of huge, right? So this is Egypt. This is modern day Libya. You can see this is modern day Turkey. This is Syria and Israel and Jordan, etc. And then you have Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and then some of the former Soviet republics up here, right? This is an incredibly huge geographical area.
Didn't Alexander the Great conquer the Persian Empire?
Yes.
So he took all of this?
Yeah, he conquered all of that. Plus, he crossed the Indus River and he did battle against Indian warriors who were on top of elephants. Completely insane. Alexander was a madman. Yeah, he conquered this whole thing, which is crazy. And he wanted to go further. He wanted to go into China, but his men kind of mutinied because they were sick. I mean, imagine, this is 3,000 miles. So imagine crossing that amount of land, which is how long the United States is. Imagine doing it on foot, carrying equipment, and then fighting in deadly warfare the whole time, right? And that's insane, completely insane, what some of these ancient people did. But yeah, this is the Persian Empire. This is little old Greece, right? So the first thing we're going to look at is the conflict between this little tiny place and this gigantic place, right? Now, looking on a map, who should win that battle?
The huge place.
No doubt about it, right? Imagine the resources and the wealth and just the sheer manpower they have, right? But somehow these little tiny city-states that weren't even properly organized as a country were able to hold off the Persian invaders. And then, basically 2 generations after that, Alexander went and conquered them all, right? So we have to wonder what forces are at work that would allow such an improbable thing to happen, right? So we'll study some of the big battles there. We'll study Thermopylae. Have any of you ever seen the movie The 300?
Yeah, I watched it.
Pretty crazy movie, right? I mean, it's a little bit goofy. It's a little bit over the top, but it's about these guys from Sparta. Right? You might know a little tiny bit about Sparta. I mean, there's a reason why colleges and things like that still choose Spartan, the Spartans as their mascot. Like Michigan State are the Spartans, and that's because they were great warriors. I don't know if there's ever been a civilization in the history of mankind that was dedicated to warfare with the same single-minded intensity as Spartans. When you're 7 years old, you would be taken out of your home if you're a full-blooded Spartan and you're a young man, and you would begin training full-time for warfare at that moment. And that would be the only thing you would ever specialize in is war, to an insane extent. But anyway, 300 of those guys marched up to this mountain pass of Thermopylae with 3,000 other allies, and they were able to delay for days an invading force from this empire that was at least 100,000 men, and they were 3,000, right? How does that happen, right? We'll talk about that. And why would you do that, right? The 300 Spartans who went up to do that knew they were marching to their death, right? So think about if you could do something like that, right? Or is there anything in your life that you would dream of doing that for, right? Is there something you're willing to die for and do so willingly? Or how would you feel making that march up there, knowing that you had a couple days to live, knowing that the way you would die too would be violent and horrible, getting literally a sword stuck through your guts, So we'll look at stuff like that, right? We'll look at the rise of democracy in Athens, and we'll look at the next conflict will be the Peloponnesian War. So after the Greeks somehow fend off the Persians, then they fight amongst themselves. What an idiotic thing to do, right? So Athens and Sparta, these 2 great city-states, come into conflict in a series of wars called the Peloponnesian Wars. And Sparta ends up defeating Athens in that war. But we'll look at some of the glorious days of Athens when it was at its height. And who was it again? Michaela, right? You were interested in art history, so we'll spend a day looking at the Parthenon, which is one of the most beautiful buildings ever made by human beings. We will not study Alexander directly. I'll certainly allude to him. But if we were to study Alexander, we wouldn't get to Rome at all. So we will move to Rome next. So I'll show you this. There we go. So now, right, this is the kind of the next great rise in the Mediterranean world. You can see that Rome conquered a lot of the Persian Empire. A lot of that was thanks to Alexander, because that territory was sort of organized after that. Right, so here's a neat little tidbit here. This is Egypt. When Alexander died, his general Ptolemy took over the area of Egypt, which was in many ways the crown jewel of the Persian Empire, because Egypt has such incredible antiquity and resources in terms of wealth and agriculture and things like that. The Ptolemies ruled Egypt all the way to 31 BC, which is actually where this course will go to. And an ancestor of Ptolemy, probably a woman you've heard of before, is Cleopatra. Have you heard of her before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, very famous, right? And she not only had an affair with Julius Caesar, but she also had one with Mark Antony. And she and Julius Caesar had a child that was brutally murdered when Augustus eventually took power, because the Romans were worried about an Egyptian leader, when he grew up, having a legitimate claim to the Roman Empire. So that's a kind of a horrible thing. But Cleopatra was a fascinating human being, but she's a Ptolemy, which is crazy to think about, right? So her family comes from here. Alexander conquers the whole known world pretty much, installs Ptolemy in Egypt. We still have the city of Alexandria today, named after Alexander, and then rules that city for the next, and that civilization for the next 400 plus years, until finally the Romans toppled them. Kind of amazing to think about. But so you can see this is the remnants of the Persian Empire, but the Romans were never able to get to conquer this area here. And if you know anything about this area, not many people can conquer it. This is Afghanistan. The Russians couldn't do it in the 80s, and the United States doesn't seem to be able to do it now. Not to say that we're trying to conquer it, but we don't really seem to be able to subdue it. It's just very difficult territory, and the people there are just survivors. They're fierce, fierce individuals. And the Romans weren't able to do anything. Yeah, Kevin.
I forgot, Shakespeare, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Was he around at the time of? No, he wasn't, right? The Roman Empire.
No, but he had incredible knowledge of that area. Shakespeare famously says, "I know little Latin and less of Greek," but he's being insanely modest because he knew this stuff really well, and he has all kinds of historical plays that deal with this period. So he wrote a play called Julius Caesar, for example. That's a masterpiece. Yeah, but Shakespeare was writing in the 1400s, mostly into the 1500s. So he is Rome in the West falls in the 700 A.D. So he's 700 years after the fact, but still has incredible knowledge of it. Good question, very good question. But anyway, so we see this little tiny town on the Tiber River known as Rome, and so we'll trace the expansion of that civilization. We'll look at how they took over the Italian peninsula, how they came into conflict with a great African power known as Carthage. You probably heard of Carthage before, maybe. It's right here in Africa. And the African coast was incredibly important to the Roman Empire as early as the 1st century AD. In a little town right here called Leptis Magna, you have a Roman emperor who was born in Africa. So it was a truly international empire. You had emperors born in Spain and France as well, which is kind of amazing to think about. But anyway, how does this little tiny town come to dominate this entire area? and we'll try to answer that question. And we'll even talk about the legitimacy of it too. You know, is Rome good or bad or something in between? You know, because empire building often is a very evil enterprise too. So we'll try to kind of look at both sides of the issue and look at it in a nuanced and in an interesting sort of way. I think we're out of time though, guys. I could talk all day to you guys, and hopefully I've whetted your appetite a little bit and you're ready and interested. But I'll let you guys sign off, and it was really nice meeting you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Awkward.